What's up, my fellow clout givers? Recently, Kim Josh-un came back to make some quality content, and one of the videos he made is about, quote, safe sequels. He talks about certain games like Starfield, Spider-Man 2, Doom Eternal, and most notably, Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I don't really care about Zelda at all, but the reason why I'm going to be talking about this video today is because a certain somebody has responded to this video and missed the mark entirely, and that is the great and wise ThunderStruck115's. Now, the title of this video is called Tears of the Kingdom is bad because it's too good. Kim Josh-un is a moron. Now, the title of this video, along with the text in the thumbnail, is a bit of a straw man, and we will get into why that is. But for now, let's get into the video and dissect his arguments against Josh, shall we?
Doom Eternal is pretty much the gold standard for a modern game sequel in my eyes. Probably my second favorite game ever, only losing it to Breath of the Wild, which we'll also talk about later on. But Doom Eternal is absolutely phenomenal. It does all of the following. It improves on its predecessor to make it objectively better. It has enough gameplay differences to make it good in its own way, while still giving you a reason to go back to its original to get a significantly different type of game. And it has so many new ideas that make it more of its own thing rather than just another sequel.
I want everybody to keep this in mind for when he talks about Tears of the Kingdom.
At first glance, Doom Eternal seems to be another one of those safe sequels that I just listed earlier. But once you actually play the game and really understand it, you realize, oh shit, this game could pretty much be another reboot in the series like 2016 was.
No, because Doom Eternal basically took what Doom 2016 did, added some shit on top of it, and made it an even better game.
Josh wasn't saying that it wasn't a better game than its predecessor. His point is that Doom Eternal innovated so much from Doom 2016 that it stands out more and is not just a generic sequel along the lines of Spider-Man 2 where it just feels like the same game.
It changes, adapts, and expands. Doom Eternal has objectively better levels. Doom Eternal has objectively better levels.
Oh great, we're dealing with one of those pseudo-intellectuals from Reddit. No, Doom Eternal does not have objectively better level design, because whether or not you will like the levels in Doom Eternal more than Doom 2016 is inherently subjective.
No, better level design is objective. What's subjective is your preference in level design, but Doom Eternal does have an objectively better level design than Doom 2016 does. Doom 2016's arenas, backgrounds, and worlds are not as complex and diverse as Doom Eternal's, and the gameplay within those levels goes above and beyond what Doom 2016 did. With how Doom Eternal's mechanics works, there are more options to traverse the levels and ways to go when in combat. That's why Doom Eternal has objectively better level design, plus all the other reasons Josh will mention.
This is honestly kind of a pet peeve of mine, but I really hate people that try to say that some games are objectively better or worse based on their own subjective opinions, because there really is no way to measure how objectively good or bad a game is, well, unless we're talking about the technical side of things.
That's the thing though, what Josh is talking about is not a subjective opinion. He later on is going to talk about how both Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal stand out and have their own unique reasons as to why you can still come back to play either game.
They're more diverse, more colorful, have better environmental storytelling. The encounters and arenas are way more memorable and each one has its own unique idea to it. Doom 2016 has only about like 3 different types of levels. Mars, Hell, in this kind of factory industrial-like area.
See, now that last thing right there about Doom 2016 only really having 3 level tropes is an objective fact. However, those other things you listed, such as the encounters being more memorable, that is subjective.
Doom 2016's encounters are not that memorable. Let's be honest, the best thing most players can come up with in terms of memorable encounters for Doom 2016 are the boss fights, and they always take place in the same type of levels. What Josh is saying is that because Doom Eternal has a bigger variety of worlds and level designs, it makes each encounter stand out. For example, in Phobos, you have the BFG 10K in the background constantly firing. In Exultia, you have remnants of giant battles in a landscape of ruins. In Necrovol, you are witnessing a bunch of souls being tortured in hell in a variety of different ways and are greeted with booby traps. Urdak is probably the best example because it looks entirely alien compared to everything else you've seen in the Doom franchise. With all of this in mind, that is precisely why Josh is saying that Doom Eternal's encounters are a lot more memorable. Even if it is a subjective thing to say, he did exactly what you asked for and backed it up with objective statements.
On the other hand, every single level in Doom Eternal is completely fucking different from one another. Doom 2016 has you on Mars for like the first 3 levels, I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, it's been a really fucking long time since I've played it because honestly I don't really like it. Not that it's objectively bad, I just prefer the way Eternal plays more tenfold.
So you admit it's a subjective thing, not an objective one. Got it.
He never specified otherwise. All he's doing is backing backing up his arguments with objective facts.
But Doom Eternal, on the other hand, kicks off with Hell on Earth, which is this badass post-apocalyptic wasteland of some random city on Earth that's been taken over by the demons with giant-ass motherfuckers walking around as you take out these big-ass demons in the second fucking arena. Holy shit. And then...
Okay, now this is off topic, but for fuck's sake, dude, balance your fucking audio. Your music is way too loud.
His audio seems fine. I think your blood sugar's just low, but for real, his audio's not that bad. I can still make out what he's saying. If anything, there are moments in your response portions that it can get difficult to hear what you're saying.
After that, with the second level, with Exultia, it has not one, but two fucking environments that are completely different from one another, with this old castle-looking place you start the level in, to a hell landscape that you finish the level with after you go through a portal. From the level design alone, Doom Eternal is made an objectively better game than its predecessor. Yet, there's still plenty of reason to go back to its predecessor. See, Doom Eternal's pacing is fast. Like, 5 times as fast as 2016 was. And honestly, for some people, this fast pace is such a drastic change from its predecessor that people prefer 2016 to Eternal.
But Josh, how can people prefer 2016? I thought you said Doom Eternal was objectively better.
Again, no. His point was that Doom Eternal does certain things objectively better than Doom 2016 does, but despite that, Doom 2016 also has some aspects that give people reason to come back to it. He's basically saying that both games have their own unique reasons on why they're really good.
Yeah, I know I'm kind of ramming this point home, but it's only because I wish to demonstrate just how fucking stupid it is to call a game objectively better or objectively worse due to subjective tastes in gameplay.
Except your point holds no merit when you are completely misinterpreting what Josh is saying. He's not saying the game entirely is better, but it does certain things better than Doom 2016 does, and the big reason Josh is saying Doom Eternal is considered objectively better is most likely because Doom Eternal has a better gameplay loop than Doom 2016. And don't get me started on that. It's like comparing a pile of shit to a diamond.
Even though Eternal is the objectively better game. There's like two things I prefer in 2016 to Eternal, and that's the music and the gritty atmosphere it builds. Eternal is kind of cartoonish at times, which I like, but I just think 2016 had a better atmosphere. Yet, that's what's so cool about these games. They can coexist with one another with reasons to go back to each one for personal preferences. If you like the slower pace and more of just a power fantasy, you can go back to Doom 2016. If you like the faster pace with more of a challenge, you can go to Eternal.
And again, this motherfucker keeps saying that Doom Eternal is objectively better, and yet here he is listing subjective reasons why some people might want to go back to 2016 or Eternal.
You have to be dense in order to insist that that's your main takeaway from this portion of the video. There's no need to repeat yourself either. Josh isn't just talking about personal preferences when it comes to these games, but rather he is saying that Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal are both unique in their own right, and that gives people reason to come back to Doom 2016 despite Eternal existing. You can play one or the other or both and still have a good time. That's what he's saying.
Which just proves that Doom Eternal is not objectively better, but subjectively better.
That statement's pretty oxymoronic. A game cannot be subjectively better. It has to be objectively better, otherwise nobody's gonna play it. If Doom Eternal was only considered subjectively better, then it would not have made such an impact like it has.
Fucking great. And finally, Doom Eternal adds a shitload of new content that's nowhere to be found in 2016. It has a hub now that you can go to in between levels and explore as you wish to unlock different bonuses. It's got a bunch of new mods for your guns like the microwave beam and the plasma gun, the rapid fire for the base shotgun, the fucking grapple hook with the super shotgun, which is like the best addition in a sequel ever fucking done. It has a completely different multiplayer from Doom 2016, which I will say I definitely prefer 2016's multiplayer to what they added, but again, contributing to the fact that this game is an absolutely perfect sequel.
So the fact that Doom Eternal has a multiplayer mode that you consider to be worse than Doom 2016's multiplayer contributes to the fact that Doom Eternal is a perfect sequel to 2016?
No, dumbass, that's not what he's saying. You cut him off mid-sentence to make it seem like that's the point he was trying to make. Josh is saying that instead of Doom Eternal having the exact same kind of multiplayer as Doom 2016, they come up with something unique so that 2016's multiplayer doesn't feel replaced. On the topic of cutting people off though, Thunder, weren't you the guy that got pissed off at Krillix for cutting you off during the whole arena shooter debacle? You might want to learn to...
He
that same energy.
My guy, did you not listen back to this video before clicking upload, or are you just that fucking stupid?
Like you always say, Thunder, projection detected, opinion rejected.
Not to mention there's a bunch of other shit that was in Doom 2016 that wasn't in Doom Eternal, like the classic levels, or the snap map mode, which I would have killed to have in Doom Eternal, considering that I think Eternal has the vastly superior sandbox and combat loop, and I would have loved to see what kind of custom maps could be built with that. But guess what? You can't do that in Eternal because it's not there, but it is in 2016.
Josh never stated otherwise. You are still trying to just hammer it in that Josh is inconsistent with what a perfect sequel is, but in reality, you are still completely misunderstanding what he's trying to say.
Yeah, don't look now, but I'm finding some flaws in your quote-unquote perfect sequel.
No, you have not found any flaws in Josh's ideal perfect sequel. You are just completely oblivious to what Josh is actually saying.
It doesn't completely replace its predecessor while still adding and changing a bunch, making it an objectively better game. This wasn't at launch, but now it has the Horde mode where you have to fight through a bunch of different arenas of enemies to see how high you can score. It's got the master levels, which I'm not 100% sure if they were in 2016 or not, but they basically remixed levels from Eternal, making them still have the same style, but such a different experience from what was before. So yeah, as you can see, Doom Eternal, it isn't a perfect game, but it's a perfect sequel in my eyes. I think it's the gold standard for every game sequel, and more games need to strive to be like this. Some other games that I would say are to this level where they're perfect sequels slash successors are Majora's Mask, the original Resident Evil 3 and 4, Resident Evil 7, Elden Ring, God of War 2018, Persona 5, Mario Wonder, which ironically just came out a few days ago as I'm writing this video, and there's probably a shit ton of others that I'm just forgetting about. Basically, the point is, a sequel should be standing alone and have a clear differentiation from its predecessor, but still be better than it in the end.
Again, keep this in mind for when he talks about Tears of the Kingdom.
Actually, we're just going to go ahead and skip right to that part because there's a good bit of fluff that we don't need to cover. So let's go ahead and see Thunderstruck's issues with Josh critiquing Tears of the Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom, replacing the original. What? Josh criticizes Tears of the Kingdom? I know, it's insane. Because for the record, I do think Tears of the Kingdom is an absolutely phenomenal game. Easily one of my favorite games to come out this generation. Probably my game of the year. And, I mean, it's a sequel to my favorite game ever. How could I even begin to dislike it? But it does have a flaw, which it's not a very good sequel, at least in my eyes. And that's because of the fact that it completely replaces the original. Everything that Breath of the Wild did was done here in Tears of the Kingdom, but better in every way. Everything that Breath of the Wild did was done here in Tears of the Kingdom, but better in every way.
I don't know about y'all, but that sounds like an ideal sequel to me. Like, in your eyes, would this game be better if it just kneecapped itself to intentionally be worse than Breath of the Wild in some aspect? Because that's a big fucking yikes if that's the case.
Actually, the point Josh is trying to make is that Tears of the Kingdom plays exactly like Breath of the Wild, just with a lot more content and features that could have been added as an update, but instead was made into a sequel. Now with that in mind, because Tears of the Kingdom plays exactly like its predecessor, but better in every way, that gives people no reason to go back to Breath of the Wild unless if it's for story reasons. TLDR, if the sequel's gameplay is the same as the prequel but better, why play the prequel? That's the point Josh is trying to make that you once again completely misunderstand.
There was more to explore, the exploration is better, the combat is more advanced, you can make your own shit now and make vehicles, the puzzles have you thinking more outside the box, the apocalyptic environments actually look like they've been going through shit, the dungeons are more varied, the final boss, ooh, the final boss, fucking perfect. Yeah, literally my only problem with this game is that it's too good, to the point where if you're thinking about playing Breath of the Wild, you might as well just skip it and play Tears of the Kingdom, unless you really want to know what happened in the first game, which honest to god, there's really not much to it. Tears of the Kingdom makes pretty much no reason to go back to Breath of the Wild.
Oh, I don't know, maybe because they want to have fun playing Breath of the Wild, because, you know, just because Tears of the Kingdom released and it's a better game than Breath of the Wild doesn't mean that Breath of the Wild is suddenly a bad game.
He never stated that it was a bad game. He's simply saying that Tears of the Kingdom is so good to the point that there's little to no reason to go back to Breath of the Wild because both games play the exact same, with the only difference being that the sequel has much more to play around with. That's why he doesn't consider Tears of the Kingdom a perfect sequel like he does with Doom Eternal. With the Doom games, they both have their own unique features that give people reason to play both of them, but with the Zelda games, if the sequel is the same game but better, then you may as well just stick to the sequel. Not only are you strawmanning Josh by thinking his ideal perfect sequel is worse than the prequel, but you're also just pretty fucking dense, let's be honest here. I think you need to take your own advice and listen to yourself speak before you upload.
For example, Bioshock 2, in terms of gameplay, basically takes what Bioshock 1 did, fixes some of its issues, and improves upon it in several significant ways. But guess what? I still go back and play Bioshock 1 because it's fun.
Good for you, but that doesn't change Josh's point. As he stated earlier, the only reason anyone could go back to Breath of the Wild is for the story, but if it's for the gameplay, they would most likely go play the one that has more gameplay features. And so that means they'll most likely go play Tears of the Kingdom instead. Like I said earlier, man, paying attention really helps make better YouTube content.
Dishonored 2 basically takes everything that Dishonored 1 did and improves upon it, but guess what? I still go back and play Dishonored 1 because it's still fun. Black Ops 1 Zombies basically took everything that World at War Zombies did, but improves upon it in every way. But guess what? I still go back and play World at War Zombies because it's fun. I could keep listing examples, but I think y'all get the point.
I just want to point out that this is entirely anecdotal, so just to prove Josh's point even further, I'll give my own anecdotal examples. Black Ops 3 Zombies exists, and that's the only zombies mode I'll ever devote my time into, because Black Ops 3 Zombies did so much things better than any other zombies mode did in the previous and even later zombies games have done. If I consider Black Ops 3 Zombies having the best zombies experience compared to the rest, why would I want to go back and play any of the other ones? I'll give you another anecdotal example, StarCraft 2. StarCraft 2, in my opinion, is the best RTS game ever made, and they have made so much new content for it to the point of insanity, and it's so much better than its predecessor. However, I rarely ever play StarCraft 1 because of its outdated gameplay. The only reason I ever want to go back and play StarCraft 1 is because it has a better story, and it's for nostalgia reasons. So that begs the question again, if I think StarCraft 2 has such amazing gameplay compared to its predecessor, why would I go back to StarCraft 1 besides nostalgia reasons? I rest my case.
Which means it's a great game, and obviously better than Breath of the Wild, but not as good of a sequel.
That is such an oxymoronic statement. If a sequel that basically takes everything that the previous game did and improves upon it significantly to the point where it's a great game, does that not mean it's also a great sequel? Hate to break it to you, Josh, but not every sequel has to reinvent the wheel.
The wording on Josh's part is a bit weird, but basically what he's trying to say is that Tears of the Kingdom is not a good sequel to him because it gives him no reason to go back to Breath of the Wild due to how much better the sequel is.
Because everything here is just Breath of the Wild expanded upon. And that really sticks out like a sore thumb in the Zelda franchise especially, because there is not a single mainline Zelda game that does that. Each new game in the series has had a massive change to its gameplay until Tears of the Kingdom came out. They've all been able to stand on their own and be their own thing. You don't call Majora's Mask Ocarina of Time 2, even though it uses the same engine and at face value looks exactly the same, because Majora's Mask plays nothing like Ocarina of Time.
My guy, outside of the masks and the time loop mechanic, Majora's Mask pretty much plays exactly the same as Ocarina of Time.
But the new features that Majora's Mask has compared to Ocarina of Time is what makes it unique and gives people a reason to go back to it. I still don't understand how you can be this dense. This is what eating peanuts with the shell does to a man.
Shit like this is how you know that this dude knows nothing about what he's fucking talking about.
Once again, projection detected, opinion rejected.
I mean, hell, the entire development premise behind Majora's Mask was that Nintendo wanted to take the engine and the assets and the scripts that they had developed for Ocarina of Time and then flip it to create a new game in less than a year.
You just inadvertently acknowledge that Majora's Mask has a reason on why it stands out compared to Ocarina of Time, because even though the development cycle of Majora's Mask was that short to the point of reusing the engine and a lot of its assets, they were still able to give a reason for people to play it with its brand new features. Tears of the Kingdom is not on that same level, because if it's simply Breath of the Wild but better, why play Breath of the Wild?
Tears of the Kingdom, on the other hand, I mean, I wouldn't really blame you for calling it Breath of the Wild 2 from how much it just uses stuff from that game and builds upon it. And it's not like Tears didn't add enough content, because it absolutely did. Again, 2 new maps, one of which is the size of the base overworld map, 150 new shrines, and all this other shit that I really don't even feel like talking about.
I mean, fuck, if I really wanted to, I could just end the video off right here, because here he just fucking admitted that the game added more than enough content.
Wow, Thunder, I wonder why you are able to catch Josh in all of these imaginary gotchas of him supposedly backtracking his statements. It couldn't be because you are completely misunderstanding what he's trying to say, right? I swear, anything Josh says just goes into one of Thunder's ears and out the other.
Like, he pretty much just destroys his entire point here.
The only reason you think he destroyed his own point is because you don't understand what he's trying to say.
And neither is the stuff that it added bad, it's just the content added here was stuff from the base game but now expanded upon.
Oh, really?
Thunder, this is not a gotcha like you think it is. Josh never denied the fact that Tears of the Kingdom has a bunch of new content compared to Breath of the Wild. He is simply stating that because Tears of the Kingdom is playing exactly like Breath of the Wild but with so much new content, he feels that there is no need to go back to play Breath of the Wild. Can you at least try and actually understand the video rather than strawman him the entire time?
Now, I don't know if you're fucking blind, Josh, but the shit that I just showed you was not in Breath of the Wild. There is so much content in Tears of the Kingdom that isn't in Breath of the Wild, and there's a lot of shit that you can do in Tears of the Kingdom that wasn't in Breath of the Wild. Now, what was it that you said that Doom Eternal did that made it such a great sequel?
But Doom Eternal is absolutely phenomenal. It does all of the following. It improves on its predecessor to make it objectively better. It has enough gameplay differences to make it good in its own way, while still giving you a reason to go back to its original to get a significantly different type of game. And it has so many new ideas that make it more of its own thing rather than just another sequel.
It improves upon its predecessor. Well, it fleshes out certain mechanics more, it improves the puzzle solving and the exploration. So I'd say it checks that box. Now, I guess what drastically changes gameplay means would be subjective, but if you're gonna say that Doom Eternal drastically changes the gameplay, then I could argue that for Tears of the Kingdom as well. Because what exactly did Doom Eternal do compared to Doom 2016 to drastically change it? Increase the mobility options? Well, so did Tears of the Kingdom with the Zonai devices. I can do things like strap a rocket to my shield and instantly fly up. Give us a set of new levels? Well, Tears of the Kingdom not only changes up the overworld from Breath of the Wild, but also adds the depths, which is the same size as the overworld, as well as the sky. In addition to 152 new shrines and 6 new main dungeons. New weapon mods? Well, Tears of the Kingdom lets you attach any material to your weapons using the fuse mechanic, and you can also affix them to your arrows as well. And your weapons' properties will change depending on what you attach. New enemies? Well, Tears of the Kingdom has far more enemies than Breath of the Wild ever did. So if Doom Eternal is your idea of drastically changing the gameplay, then in that case, Tears of the Kingdom does the same thing, and adds new ideas / elements previously lacking. Well, I don't think there's any room for debate there. The ability to build shit wasn't in Breath of the Wild, the fuse mechanic wasn't in Breath of the Wild, the depths weren't in Breath of the Wild, there wasn't anything in the sky in Breath of the Wild with the exception of Divine Beast, Farm and Doe. You didn't have friendly champions fighting alongside you in Breath of the Wild like you do in Tears of the Kingdom. So really, it sounds to me like Tears of the Kingdom is a case of an ideal sequel like you had for Doom Eternal. And yet for some reason you find yourself completely unable to
Keep that same energy.
Oh my god. Thunder. Josh never denied any of these. Josh knows full on well how much content has been added into Tears of the Kingdom. The problem for Josh is that he feels like Tears of the Kingdom completely replaces Breath of the Wild because of how it's just the same game, but better in every way. Please, for the love of all that is holy, listen to what he's actually saying instead of strawmanning him.
You could say, oh, well, the powers are the main thing that's different in this game from Breath of the Wild. And while that's true, there's still just more of an expansion on that of Breath of the Wild. But instead of the specific powers, they expand on the idea of the powers themselves and make them way more useful. Even the champion abilities are different and more balanced versions of the abilities in Breath of the Wild.
I could literally say the same thing about the weapon mods in Doom Eternal just being expanded from the ones in 2016. But he's just gonna conveniently gloss over that. What can I say, man? Selective outrage at its finest.
How on earth are you sitting there claiming that Josh glossed over the expansion of Doom's weapon mods when he literally talked about it in the beginning of his video? Thunder, I don't know if you have short-term memory loss or something, but Josh literally said this.
It's got a bunch of new mods for your guns like the microwave beam and the plasma gun, the rapid fire for the base shotgun, the fucking grapple hook with the super shotgun, which is like the best addition in a sequel ever fucking done.
Like I said, man, if you really want to help yourself make much better content, it would really help to just pay attention once in a while.
Again, there is nothing objectively wrong with what they did in Tears of the Kingdom. They just took Breath of the Wild and made it the best game possible it could be, which from a certain angle, I really appreciate that. But
you say that there's nothing wrong with that, so in that case, where's the problem?
Maybe let Josh finish what he's saying before jumping to conclusions. I think that would really help your case here, or rather slightly improve your content, because you're being extremely hypocritical in this regard. Let them finish what they're saying before you give your input on it.
But as someone who fucking adores Breath of the Wild, again, my favorite game ever, it just kind of sucks to see it replaced like this. Like, I feel insulted yet loved at the same time. It's weird.
Tears of the Kingdom did not replace Breath of the Wild. You can still go back and play Breath of the Wild if you want.
That's the thing though, Josh doesn't necessarily feel the need to go back to Breath of the Wild anymore because Tears of the Kingdom exists. The difference between the Doom games and the Zelda games is that Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal have their own unique game loops, but Tears of the Kingdom plays the exact same as Breath of the Wild, but has so much more content to play with than its predecessor does. Do you see the problem that Josh is having now?
And this isn't the case like the GTA trilogy where they delisted the originals. You can still buy Breath of the Wild in the fucking eShop and most retailers still have it in stock.
No, Thunder, you're taking this way too literally. He's not saying that Tears of the Kingdom literally replaced Breath of the Wild as a game, but that since Tears of the Kingdom exists, it feels like Breath of the Wild is replaced by its sequel. And that is because Tears of the Kingdom plays exactly like Breath of the Wild, but with much more content to play with.
So now what would I do here? Have both of these games be open-ended in their own way. Leave Breath of the Wild with its focus on the open-ended exploration, and give Tears of the Kingdom a focus on open-ended puzzle solving and combat.
Tears of the Kingdom already has open-ended puzzle solving.
Yes, but Josh would prefer if Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom had their own unique gameplay loops. He literally just said that he wants Breath of the Wild to focus a lot more on its open world exploration, and then he wants Tears of the Kingdom to be a more linear experience with its open-ended puzzle solvings. My guy, you completely struggle to comprehend what Josh wants in his video.
Because back when I was playing this game religiously, my brother would always play whenever I wasn't.
We do not care.
So Breath of the Wild went for a more general open-ended approach, which I love, but Tears went for the exact same approach. So what if it went for a more linear approach, like classic Zelda?
Wow, Thunder! You hear that? He wants it to be more linear. Almost like that's what he's been trying to say when he was talking about the game's puzzle solving.
But with the same physics-based puzzles and combat that both of these games have. And from the first few trailers, it seemed like Tears was going to have a more linear approach, and then the game came out and that was not at all the case.
Oh my god, you really are a special kind of stupid if you genuinely thought that Tears of the Kingdom was going to be linear. I mean, literally fucking nothing pointed at it being a linear game. In fact, it literally shows you doing a bunch of shit in the open world.
My guy, the first reveal trailer of Tears of the Kingdom, which back then was just known as Breath of the Wild 2, looked a lot more linear than what Tears of the Kingdom turned out to be. You've gotta have tunnel vision to not recognize that.
So yeah, make it more linear. First off, we have to get rid of 2 of the maps in the game. Since obviously we can't just have the base game's map, we can just cut out the base game's map and the Sky Islands.
And now this dude's suggesting that Tears of the Kingdom cuts 2/3 of its content, like what the fuck? I thought the whole point was to make Tears of the Kingdom better, not worse.
I mean, obviously, if you're going to make a game linear, then you don't really need to prioritize having open world content, so I'd say it's pretty fair to say that he would cut out 2 of the worlds. If you didn't cut him off like you are now, he would start explaining a lot more in depth on what he would add if Tears of the Kingdom was a linear experience. Also, if Josh's proposal of turning Tears of the Kingdom linear is supposed to make the game worse in your eyes, then you're basically saying that this new version of Tears of the Kingdom would be bad because it's like the older Zelda games, which is retarded. Zelda playing like Zelda doesn't mean it's the same game entirely, and it doesn't mean it's worse.
And we completely overhaul the depths, give you way more to do down there, get rid of the darkness stuff because that's not really what we're going for here. I'd say basically just make the map like a modern rendition of Termina from Majora's Mask, and what you gotta do is in the opening cutscenes, Zelda actually falls now, she doesn't get transported back in time, she falls down into the depths, and Link chases after her. And then it turns out she got captured by Ganondorf, so Link has to rescue Zelda and find a way out of the depths. Have specific quests you have to do in order. Obviously, we'd be cutting the flashbacks and finding those out in the open world, but I don't really think anybody's gonna miss those.
No, but you know what I do miss? Being able to hear you clearly, because once again, your music is way too fucking loud.
I mean, sure, maybe he could work on his audio balancing just a little bit, but it's not so bad to the point you can't understand what he's saying.
Probably cut out the Koroks too, since again this has less of a focus on exploration and more on puzzles and combat. Have more of those classic dungeons in the game. As much as I love the shrines in Tears of the Kingdom, I think you're gonna have to take them out and instead have way more dungeons in Tears, like double the count, or if you really want to get crazy, since this would still be an open world game, fucking triple the count. And
my guy, not even a minute ago you said you were making this linear like the classic Zelda games, but now you're saying it's gonna be open world? Like, dude, make up your fucking mind.
No, dumbass, that's not what he's fucking saying. He is saying that since he wants Tears of the Kingdom to go with the more linear approach, he would add more dungeons so that there's more content to go through, and that it would also give Tears of the Kingdom its own identity so that it's not just Breath of the Wild 2. Once again, he wants the game to be unique so that Breath of the Wild has a purpose.
have some of the dungeons be optional. Not all of them, or even most of them, just like maybe 3, and then bring back heart pieces and implement them into the world, like how they are in classic Zelda, where you have to solve a puzzle to get get them. Now, we gotta talk about the powers, because I've been back and forth of whether you should keep them or not, and I'm thinking, yeah, keep the powers. They are so fucking good. They make puzzles so much better, it's not even comparable to Breath of the Wild's, and they make the puzzles way more open-ended. So you'd make sure like each puzzle has 4 or 5 solutions to it, and yeah, the rest should be good. This way, if you liked the open-ended exploration, go anywhere, do anything shit in Breath of the Wild, you still have that game to go back to, but now if you want to play the more open-ended puzzle solving in Tears of the Kingdom, you have that to go back to. Also, I think the combat should be improved. I'm not sure exactly what should be changed that isn't already changed because of the new powers, but just have it be more tactical and have you like have to think about it more instead of just mashing Y.
My guy, there is more to the combat than just mashing Y. You know, you have dodges, you have heavy attacks, you have shields, you have different weapon types, you have the fuse mechanic, you have the Zonai devices, you have arrows which you can attach any material to. In fact, there are some enemies like the boss Bokoblin that are specifically designed to get you not to mash, because if you do, you're gonna get killed. Like, I'm not gonna say the combat's as deep as fucking Elden Ring, but there's more to it than just mashing Y.
Now, I've never played Tears of the Kingdom, and I don't have any intention to, so I can't really comment on this, but my best guess as to what Josh is trying to say is to make the combat feel more like a traditional Zelda game, rather than something along what Breath of the Wild did. Again, that's just my best guess. I've never played Tears of the Kingdom.
Make enemies like a timed puzzle of their own, and yeah, I think that's pretty much all the changes I'd make. So that's how I think these games could have been made better sequels. Again, this stuff is not necessarily picking up the flaws in these games, it's to make them better sequels, like with the Tears of the Kingdom idea I had. I still think the Tears of the Kingdom we actually got is still a better game than the sequel I had in mind. I only brought it up as a way to make Tears of the Kingdom differentiate itself more from Breath of the Wild. But I still think the Tears of the Kingdom we actually got is still a better game than the sequel I had in mind.
I mean, this dude literally fucking admits that Tears of the Kingdom, as it currently exists, is better than what he's envisioning for Tears of the Kingdom. So, again, what the fuck is the problem here?
I only brought it up as a way to make Tears of the Kingdom differentiate itself more from Breath of the Wild. I only brought it up as a way to make Tears of the Kingdom differentiate itself more from Breath of the Wild. I only brought it up as a way to make Tears of the Kingdom differentiate itself more from Breath of the Wild.
He keeps saying he wants these changes so that Tears of the Kingdom would be a better sequel, yet here we have him admitting that it would make it a worse sequel, and that he just wants to change it just for the sake of it being different, when literally the entire point of a sequel is to give people more of the thing that they like.
Thunder, I would love to know how Josh's proposal of Tears of the Kingdom would somehow be worse than its predecessor, and how this new proposal of how Tears of the Kingdom would play is not giving people more of what they like. Because if a Zelda game plays like a Zelda game, chances are people are gonna like it. Just because this new proposal of how Tears of the Kingdom would be is not entirely open world like Breath of the Wild is, that doesn't mean it would be objectively worse than its predecessor. Also, Josh is not coming up with this idea just for the sake of changing things. He would like these changes for Tears of the Kingdom because it would make that game and its predecessor stand out as unique games with their own gameplay loops. That means there would be more reason to play both games, not just stick to one game because it's the same game but better. Now, with all of that in mind, I would love to hear you explain how this proposal is somehow not giving people what they like. What? What pseudo-intellectual bullshit could you possibly come up with in order to disprove my point?
Like, I think this clip of Tim Hansen describes this dude's whole mentality here.
Pointless innovation. Change for the sake of change, and not genuine improvement.
Changing Tears of the Kingdom into a more linear experience just so it differentiates itself from Breath of the Wild is not a change for the sake of change. If anything, turning Tears of the Kingdom into a more linear game is what people were actually expecting when the first reveal trailer for the game came out.
Spider-Man, I think with either one you could make a fair argument for what could be a better final product. With Starfield, yeah, that was basically just me fixing the issues of that game to make it a better game, but also a better sequel. So that's the end. Overall, I think all three of these games are fine enough. None of them are absolutely terrible, and even though I tore Starfield a new one, I still think that all of these have some potential in one way or another. So I guess the question you've had with the video is, why the fuck does this matter? And honestly, it really doesn't.
Well, at least we can agree on something there.
Wow, Thunder, I could barely hear you there in that segment. Maybe you should take your own advice and edit your audio!
As long as the game is still good, whether the game is a good sequel or not doesn't really matter. I just don't really like the idea of games not changing enough about them, or being built so heavily on the bones of their predecessors that they outright replace the predecessor. So as a last example, I'm gonna leave you guys with probably the most interesting example of another golden standard of a sequel, which is actually for a game I really don't like that much, and that is Resident Evil Village. What this game did was make it not only a sequel to Resident Evil 7, but also a spiritual successor to Resident Evil 4 at the same time. And what it does is combine elements from each game to make it this Frankenstein of a game. The style and camera of Resident Evil 7, yet with the atmosphere and gameplay of Resident Evil 4. It's actually really cool how it does this. As much as I dislike Village, it tries to make the best of both worlds across these two games. And while it doesn't really succeed in that, I can still appreciate it for what it was attempting to do. It doesn't replace the originals, but creates something new altogether and just its own thing. The only thing I could say is that it isn't really better than either of its predecessors, but I'm not really worried about that with this topic in mind right now.
So really, it just sounds to me that it doesn't matter to you if a sequel is better than its predecessor as long as it's different. Because like you said, the changes to Resident Evil Village made it worse than its predecessors. And yet that's a good sequel to you. Like, ambitious sequel? Okay, I'm not gonna dispute that. But good sequel? No. See, there's nothing wrong with being overly ambitious with your sequel as long as you succeed, but if you fail, then, well, you fail. Because otherwise, Halo 5 would have been the best fucking sequel of all time, at least when it comes to the campaign, given how fucking different it was. And yet, it is those differences precisely that made everybody fucking hate it. Point is, sequels don't always have to reinvent the fucking wheel every single time.
Once again, you are completely misunderstanding what Josh is saying in this part. Resident Evil Village, despite Josh's opinions on it, is unique in its own way compared to the likes of RE7 and RE4, meaning since RE Village is sort of different than its predecessors, that once again gives people more reason to play all of those games because they all have their unique features that allow them to coexist with one another without being a safe sequel. Josh wasn't saying that the quality of the games didn't matter either, rather he was saying that the quality of the games was not relevant to the topic at hand. What's in RE Village, you can't get in its predecessors. What's in Doom Eternal, you can't get in Doom 2016. They have their unique reasons as to why you can enjoy them, and that also applies to my anecdotal experiences with games like StarCraft 2 and Black Ops 3. And while games like Halo 5 do exist that tried innovating in its gameplay but failed, there are many games out there that try something new and end up doing very well. And I think that's where Josh is coming from. If a sequel is different from its predecessor and contains its own unique gameplay loop that is equally as fun or at least can be enjoyed as its own experience, then that's all that matters at the end of the day, is that you can enjoy it. And with that, we have reached the end of Thunderstruck's terrible response to Kim Josh-un. With a response like this to an analysis like that, you really either have to be incredibly disingenuous or just really stupid. My bet is on the latter. What this video was a hard swing and a hard miss. It really just came off as Thunderstruck dismantling Josh's arguments in a black and white manner, and thus he just completely misunderstands what Josh is trying to get at in his video. So my advice to Thunder is to basically pay attention. Actually listen to what Josh is trying to say, and don't constantly strawman him to the point of absurdity. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe and follow my Twitter, because I need clout.